A few years back, I lived in an apartment complex. It wasn't in a bad part of town. I even lucked out, somehow managing to move into the same building as a handful of friends of mine. I thought it was awesome. A couple of months after living there, I noticed things missing. It was never anything big, like my laptop or Xbox, but my iPod and camera, and a couple of other small things vanished. I knew I just left them out in the open on the counter, but then they were gone. I figured I just misplaced them because, again, they were small items. A few times I'd get ready to leave, and my bottom lock would be locked. Now personally, I don't put much stock into doorknob locks. They've always seemed really flimsy to me, and not worth the effort, so I only ever used my deadbolt. When people would come over, I'd close the door behind them and automatically lock the deadbolt. It was a reflex. Even when I was home alone, the door was locked, but never the knob. I even felt safer using it because the deadbolt had no keyhole on the outside of the door for someone to pick. 3 times the doorknob was locked when I went to leave the house, and even though I never used it, I rationalized that sure, I probably did lock it myself. I mean, what else could it be? One day, after living there for about 7 months, I am sitting in my living room and I hear some shuffling by my front door. Since my apartment was a 1-bedroom and fairly small, I could hear it easily. I got up and moved closer, standing maybe 4 feet away from it. My heart sank as I watched my doorknob twist ever so slowly. It turned, then the door pushed in, stopped by my deadbolt. At an antagonizingly slow pace, the person on the other side pulled it closed. The door softly clicked, and I watched and listened as they slid a key into my lock and locked the doorknob. I didn't know what to do. Have you ever seen something that restarts your brain? It was so unfathomable that you can't just take in the information. That's what this was. I wish I could say I snuck up to the door and banged against it, scaring the crap out of whoever was on the other side. But I didn't. I didn't do anything, because my brain couldn't actually comprehend that someone with a key was trying to get into my apartment while I was home. The only thing that saved me was my deadbolt. And before anyone says it was a friend or my husband with a spare, no. I had the only 2 copies, I thought. Because my husband was deployed. Not even family had a spare. Everything snapped into place after that. Someone had been sneaking into my apartment and stealing stuff, and doing God knows what while I was gone, and then relocking the door behind me. And they'd attempted to do it while I was there, locking my doorknob. I mean, how many times had they been in my apartment when I wasn't home? There's no way for me to know for sure, because like I said before, I can't lock the deadbolt from the outside. Logically, I knew it had to be someone who worked in the office, a maintenance man most likely. But since I didn't look through the peephole, I couldn't find out which of the 4 guys who worked there it was. About 6 months after moving out, a friend who still lived there told me that all of the maintenance men had been fired because all of them were reported creeping around apartments and likely suspected of stealing. While this isn't outright terrifying like some of these other stories, it's still scary, at least to me. And it's another reminder to lock your doors, even when you're home. This happened about 6 months ago. First off, I work graveyard shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Then my weekends are Wednesdays and Thursdays. None of my local friends know where I live yet, and on our door we have a wreath that covers the peephole and doorknob, which has since been moved. My wife was not home when this occurred. She was thankfully at work when it all went down. I got home at roughly 7 a.m., excited to begin my weekend of gaming and spending time with the wife. The usual. I'm doing my normal routine of eating some breakfast, and after cracking open the bottle of whiskey I bought, start up my game. I use a pair of decent noise-cancelling headphones when I game, so I can't hear much of anything unless I pay attention. Around 8:30 a.m. I hear a knock. I heard this though because I'm just sitting in the lobby of a game waiting for my buddy to get back. I ignore it initially and go back to scrolling on Facebook while waiting. Not 10 seconds later, I hear it again and the doorbell rings. I now get up because it might be the landlord or something. Without checking, I unlock the door and it pushes open, and I get punched in the head, and I fall to the floor. I get up fairly quickly, and I bolt to my room where I have an old Lee Enfield rifle laying against the wall. I grab it and point it to the intruder as he's unplugging things from my PC. He sees it and yells, "Oh crap!" and bolts out the still open door. I call the police and let the apartment manager know what had just happened. The aftermath. So the police show up pretty quickly and take my statement. I tell them everything that happened, and the officer tells me he's sorry that it happened, and they'll send patrol around once an hour for the next week. They ended the conversation with, "If we catch the guy, would you want to press charges for assault?" Yes. Okay, sounds good. Honestly, we're probably not going to find this guy, seeing as nothing was stolen, and you weren't injured too badly. So, because I wasn't taken to the hospital, that means nothing happened basically. So they said that they were going to close the case. The other officers there asked me about the rifle I used. I told him it wasn't functional and that since it was so old I didn't need it registered. More of a prop than anything. I still had to show him, and the officer pulls the bolts open and does a general inspection and confirms there isn't a firing pin in the bolt. Turns out he was a weapons enthusiast. It's not relevant. So to the home invader who gave me a black eye, let's not meet again. I am 19 years old today, and I want to mention that this happened while I was in elementary school, perhaps 3rd or 4th grade. I was definitely a lot younger. At the time, I lived in an apartment complex, and I was on the 2nd floor of the building. I lived with my mother, father, and my cat. The apartment wasn't small, but it wasn't huge either. 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, with a living room and kitchen that were connected, and of course, being on the 2nd floor, we had a cute little balcony outside that you could access from the living room. So, I had overheard my mum talking about more than a few break-in attempts that had happened in the other building of the complex. Of course, being a kid, I heard everything. And though I remember most things I heard, they never really stuck with me or were processed in my mind. I was in my own little world. Plus, nothing like that had ever really happened to me before. So, why would it now? Right? I had been in a particularly good mood the day this happened. I had everything go my way, and nothing world-ending like losing my favourite rainbow pencil or breaking my butterfly-painted binder had happened. I went to school, had fun, came home, played with my friends, and even stopped by the complex's office to get some of the candy they always had in a huge dish on the table in front of the entrance. Before I knew it, the day was over, and I was ready for bed. I fell asleep quickly with no worries, hoping I'd have another great day tomorrow. I woke up at about 12:30 or 1 a.m. that night to go to the bathroom and get a drink. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a juice, and walked into the living room area and looked out the glass door onto the balcony. where I noticed my mother forgot to shut the blinds. I tiptoed towards the door and began to close the blinds when I saw a ladder propped up against the railing of the balcony. I cupped my hands around my eyes and pressed my face up to the window so that I could make sure I was actually seeing what I thought I saw. I was right. There it was, the top of a ladder. I was about to go and wake my mum and ask her where the ladder came from when I saw a hand reach up the last bar of the ladder. I didn't necessarily know that whoever's that hand belonged to was trying to break into my house, but I had the most gut-wrenching feeling that they weren't supposed to be climbing up my balcony at this time, or any time for that matter. I felt like I had to act fast, like by the time I went and got my mother, they would already be prepared to hurt me and my parents. I did the only thing I could do to scare them off. I flipped the balcony light off and back on again. Before I even had time to flick the light again, I heard the ladder fold back up and saw about 4 or 5 guys take off across the parking lot that my balcony overlooked. Then I saw something that horrified me. They were all carrying bats and crowbars, and one of them even had what looked like a pistol in his hand. I thought about running and telling my mum, and I honestly didn't know why I didn't. I ran back into my room and hid under the covers and stayed awake for hours, listening for anything that might be something else trying to break in, and I eventually, somehow, fell asleep. I didn't tell my mother until years later for some reason, and I haven't had a break-in experience since. That's it though. Thanks to everyone who took the time to hear this, and to the guys who tried to break into my apartment. Let's not meet. This was 2 weeks ago now. I live in a small apartment, a safe one. But anyway, I live alone and no one else has a key to my place. I had had some friends over for dinner. It was late. I said I would do the dishes in the morning. I give the cat some water and turn off the lights. Head to bed. I wake up about 5 to go for a run, flip the lights on, throw on my gear about to head out, and stop to feed the cat. Then I notice my trash can is about 10 feet from its regular spot, which I thought was odd. I am OCD about its placement, so I put it back. But then I noticed the scariest thing. My dishes are all done. They're all put away. My kitchen is spotless. I know I didn't have that much to drink. So by now I'm freaked out. I call the cops. The guys show up and ask what's wrong. I tell them everything. They're just as shocked as I am. No signs of forced entry or anything. The only difference was my kitchen had been cleaned as I slept. And I go to my best friend's apartment while they investigate. They turn up nothing. I'm crapping my pants upon returning to my apartment. I have no clue what to think. I don't believe in the supernatural. But when this happens, small thoughts become big ones. So I truly believed that something supernatural was haunting me for giggles. But an hour later, my neighbor knocks on the door and asks why the cops showed up. I tell her the story. She laughs and tells me she got drunk and Googled how to lockpick, practiced on my door, and then did all my dishes as compensation. I asked her how hard it was to lockpick the door, because it can't be easy. And she tells me this was the 10th time she had tried lockpicking my door, and this time was the first time she'd been successful. But she was drunk every single time. I was just haunted by a drunk woman who was bored.